Mr. Speaker, as families in Los Angeles and the surrounding areas grapple with horrible devastation, loss of homes, community, loss of life and livelihoods, I'm disgusted to hear that Republican leadership, Speaker Johnson, is planning to use this tragedy for political gain and withhold aid from California. Americans are evacuating their homes, watching their communities burn, and the Speaker and Trump and some of my Republican colleagues in Congress want to punish Americans for not voting their way in November. This is morally bankrupt. Californians obviously need this help now. I'm standing up here because I'm a Vermonter that just endured 2 horrible summers of devastating floods. I know what it feels like to go house to house and talk to people who've lost everything. And I remember talking to one man who had lost his home and his livelihood was out of his home, and he said to me, I didn't vote for you.
The gentlewoman's time has expired.
And I said, it doesn't matter that you didn't vote for me. I'm still showing up for you. We need to show up for all Americans, regardless of political party. I yield back.
I want to give a shout out to some Republican senators, Susan Collins, Joni Ernst, Lisa Murkowski, Bill Cassidy, Tom Tillis, Shelley Moore Capito, and Mitch McConnell. So a big handful, but still a handful of Republicans who spoke out against Trump's horrifying pardon of January 6th attackers, people who beat police officers with flagpoles. They are showing courage. These Republican senators are showing courage in speaking out. And I mean it most sincerely. Thank you. We need more of that. And if you have a moment, please, these are not normal times. We have to encourage people when they do something that is actually on the right side, not just of history, but of morality. So if you could reach out to Susan Collins, Joni Ernst, Lisa Murkowski, Bill Cassidy, Tom Tillis, Shelley Moore Capito, Mitch McConnell, telling them you are grateful that they had the courage, the guts to speak out.
Next. Hey, Vermont's in the house! Every movement needs a scrappy little dyke, and I am that person! Let's bring it! Everybody, we need to bring all of the energy, all of the talents we have. Each of you, you have something special to bring to this movement. I see lots of people out here saying, what can we do? How do we put our energy in? Here's the marching orders, folks. First and foremost, you cannot lose hope. I know everyone is exhausted. You're overwhelmed. You feel like you got nothing to give. I get it. You must do what you can when you can. And when you need a break, you turn to the person next to you and say, it's all for you. You go in now. You do what you can when you can. We need all of you to be our eyes and ears. Authoritarians win when we stop paying attention. You have to tune in. You have to document. You have to post what you're seeing. You have to record the truth and get the truth out. I know how tired you are. I know it. But you are not just doing it for you. You're doing it for your neighbors who don't have a pot to piss in. You're doing it for the folks who don't know if their kids are going to get fed tomorrow. This is not just about us. It's about everyone. It's about everyone. And we know that people who have not let us in today, they are not thinking about us. They are only thinking of them. So here's what you need to do. I need each and every one of you to get in touch with your inner scrappy little dyke. I need you to be fierce. I need you to be focused. I need you to wake up every day
Chairman, I'd like to submit some documents for the record.
Yeah, without objection.
First one, Progressive Insurance becomes the latest insurer to flee Texas, October 19, 2024. Second one, 15 states facing imminent insurance crisis, October 4th, 2024. Third one, insurance crisis that started in Florida and California is now spreading. Your state could be next, July 2nd, 2024. Fourth one, California isn't the only place where insurers are dropping homeowners, January 18th, 2025. Fifth one, letter from Congressman Costa to Secretary Hesgreth, dated February 1st, 2025, concerning unplanned water releases. And the sixth one, a letter from members of the California delegation to the Chairman Fitzgerald and Ranking Member Nadler, dated February 5th, 2025, supporting California's insurance regulation. Thank you.
Without objection, the chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Vermont, Ms. Balint.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The scale of this disaster is really almost impossible to comprehend. We've got 29 people who are dead. We've got 16,000 structures that were destroyed, so many Californians injured. And while these devastating fires were raging on, Republicans' first reaction was to blame the wildfires on, quote, DEI. So I'd like every witness to answer this simple question, yes or no, starting with Mr. Greenhut. Do you believe that people in Los Angeles died because the fire chief is a lesbian? Yes or no? Do you believe? No. Okay. Mr. Ring, do you believe people in Los Angeles died because the fire chief is a lesbian?
No.
Great. Mr. I don't know because your name is now upside down. Mr. Hilton, do you believe that people in Los Angeles died because the fire chief is a lesbian?
No.
Mr. Fravel, do you believe that the people of Los Angeles died because the fire chief is a lesbian?
No.
Great. So, glad we established that. But I want to remind everyone that while fires raged through Main Street in Palisades, Elon Musk said that DEI means people die, in reference to the Los Angeles Fire Department's response. And my House colleagues seem to agree. This here is a tweet from Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene posted on her official social media. It says, how's your DEI mayor of Los Angeles working out for you? So it's become crystal clear that the phrase DEI is used in place of much more offensive terms to talk about people of color, to talk about women, queer people in this country. It's sickening, and they're literally saying this while people were dying. So obviously, this has nothing to do with the families who lost everything. It does not do anything for the communities that were destroyed. It's an absolutely wrong way to deal when you have a natural disaster. And I know, because the last 2 summers in Vermont, we've had catastrophic flooding. What people need in this moment is leadership. Americans need us to get the resources that they need out to them immediately. America does not need a president that is hell-bent on dismantling our federal emergency management system or conditioning aid to California to profit off of a community's devastation. All this talk of DEI is a complete and utter distraction from the fact that we need a plan, an actual plan to help the people of California who lost everything. At this point, I'm going to yield back the balance of my time to the gentle lady from California, Ms. Kamala Gradov.
Thank you, Congresswoman, for yielding your time.
So I'm Becca Balint. I represent the state of Vermont, and I'm here as a member of Congress. I'm here as a former teacher, and I'm here as the parent of 2 kids who are in public school right now. And I'm here today to stand up for all those kids and all of those teens that are in public schools across this country. And when we stand in front of this building, I don't see the Department of Education. What I see is little Green Street School, where my kids went to elementary school. And I see Brattleboro Union High School, where my kids attend school right now. All of us know that when we stand here, we are standing in front of your schools back home in your districts. That's what this is about. And I'm thinking about all of the students that I have had over the years. Kids from all different backgrounds who have hopes, who have dreams, and who understand in the most deep way that knowledge is power. Knowledge is opportunity. Knowledge is their ticket to a better life. And I know that parents and grandparents across this country
They want their kids and grandkids to do better than they did. How's that going to happen? It's going to happen through education. That's how it's going to happen. It is a path to a better life. It's a shot at something better. I don't care if you're in Idaho or Texas or Maryland or Maine. You deserve opportunities for your kids and your grandkids. That's why we're out here today. Follow the money, as so many of my colleagues have said. Follow the money. Who are they taken from and who are they given to? It is absolutely outrageous that they're trying to take money away from our kids to give it to billionaires. Knowledge is power, and we need to make sure we use our power to protect public education.
Yep, Ms. Balint, sorry, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Let's talk about the real censorship that's happening right now. We don't need some complicated, hypothetical, deep state plot, because we are 3.5 weeks into the Trump administration, and it is actively suppressing free speech, and it's textbook authoritarianism. This whole conversation has become so twisted and so confused, so I want to bring us back to some basics. Mr. Aaron, is it accurate to describe censorship as the suppression of certain words that are considered politically unacceptable?
I think if the government is doing that, that smacks of censorship.
Yes. Is it true that the government may intentionally try to chill speech by threatening legal action or other consequences to intimidate a speaker into silence?
That's certainly true.
So censorship can take several forms. It can be the government banning speech. It can be the government creating an environment of fear that suppresses speech. And I want to look at some of the examples that we are seeing right now with Trump attacking free speech. Last week, Trump's guy in charge of the agency that's supposed to ensure fair access to the media and internet, the FCC, his name's Brendan Carr, he opened an investigation of a radio station that reported on an ICE raid. Mr. Aaron, is the government chilling or limiting speech when it threatens to investigate journalists for literally reporting the news?
I think it's a huge problem. The First Amendment protects the rights of reporters to cover what the government is doing. That's what the radio station in California was doing, is it was reporting on something of very important community interest. So the idea the FCC would respond with an investigation with threats is very incredibly chilling to reporters' ability to do their jobs.
Yeah, it's outrageous. These are the normal operations of any news organization. So let's see what it looks like when the Trump administration intimidates and censors Americans. Let's look at something more direct, more immediate. Trump's anti-DEI orders have resulted in a ban on using certain words in federally funded research. And my colleague, Ms. Jayapal, touched on this earlier. I want to pick up this thread. There's a list circulating at the National Science Foundation banning the use of words like disability, socioeconomic, and even women. I mean, it's completely absurd that they're searching for when the word women is being used in federally funded research. Mr. Aaron, is the government limiting speech when it bans the use of specific words like women?
If the government is saying that you will be ineligible for funding based on your free expression, we have a big problem.
We do have a big problem. And Trump has made it clear that one of his biggest targets for censorship is, in fact, American women. On day one, Trump removed any mention of reproductive health resources from government websites. And this purge included information on privacy protections under HIPAA, the law that keeps our health information private. The Trump administration also completely shut down reproductiverights.gov. At the CDC, officials removed contraceptive guidelines and web pages related to HIV testing. In fact, more than 8,000 government websites have been taken down in the last 2 weeks. And this kind of censorship puts American women at risk. Mr. Aaron, is the government limiting speech when it purges websites of previously public information?
I certainly think it is a terrible practice that endangers public health. The government has its own views and they can make their own websites, but the idea that they would strip away basic public health information that people need to make sure their kids are okay, understand what medicines are, all of the research priorities, that seems far out of bounds.
Shocking. It's shocking. And I want to bring it back closer to home, my home state of Vermont. At the University of Vermont, professors are now fearing that there will be federal retribution based on what they're teaching in class. Scientists can't conduct critical research because the world's largest funder of medical research has banned, again, let me say it again, the use of the word women in research. What we're seeing on the ground is not a liberal social media industry. You want us to believe that the tech billionaires in the front row of Trump's inauguration are fighting for working people, fighting for a liberal agenda? Give me a break. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields. I now recognize Mr. Fry. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And
This amendment protects health care for millions of Americans. It strikes language in the Republican budget that would take away the tax credits that help people afford their health insurance. My Republican colleagues, for some perverse reason, want to give more tax cuts to the ultra-wealthy at the expense of working class and middle-class Americans. I know Americans in my district are feeling exhausted, they're overwhelmed as they continue to face incredibly high housing costs, high healthcare costs, and grocery costs. And Congress should be putting all of its energy right now into relieving these pressures on working families. We should be working overtime to cut these costs for all of our people back home, to ensure that everyone, regardless of zip code, can really live a life of dignity and security. But that's not what's happening here. Instead, what we're seeing is Republicans working hand in hand with the Trump administration to make the richest people in the world even richer. This will not bring us security and stability. I believe so strongly that we have lost our way. To give more money to the very rich, they're planning to take away money for the people who rely on Medicaid for their health insurance. On the one hand, you've got another mega yacht or a jet for a billionaire. On the other hand, we're just talking about health care for working Americans. That's the stark reality of the situation. The attacks on health care in this plan are honestly just gross, and I'm having a hard time believing that anyone sitting here can go back to their people back home and let them know that they voted for something that would make their health care more expensive. So look, Americans buy health insurance and receive tax credits to help them with the crushing cost of health insurance. And Republicans want to give you less money to help you with the cost of that insurance. And why do they want to do this? So they can gather that money together and give tax breaks, not just to the wealthy, to the ultra wealthy. Why would anyone of conscience go along with this? Under this plan, you may end up paying thousands more in healthcare costs. And that's before we even add in the additional costs of prescription drugs, as my colleagues talked to, premiums for hospital stays, premiums for health insurance, health emergencies, and all the essential services that are not covered by insurance. This amendment would protect the money necessary for millions of Americans to afford their basic health insurance. And I want to be really clear about what would happen if the amendment is rejected. This plan will lead to cuts in Medicaid. We know where all the money is. We know where they're going to have to take the money from, and it will add to your healthcare costs. I also fear that these cuts could potentially kick seniors and children and people with disabilities off their health insurance. I know my home state of Vermont, like many of the states represented here, are really struggling right now with the healthcare crisis. Costs continue to go up, access is limited, small businesses can't afford the rising costs of their employees' health insurance coverage. In rural communities like the ones that I live in, patients are driving for hours to find a doctor that will accept their insurance. And Vermonters are postponing their care because they can't afford it. We have to be fighting for families who are struggling in rural America. And this plan would mean more than 30,000 Vermonters who get their health care through the Affordable Care Act would see their premiums go up by nearly $800 a year. That increase will crush the working families in my state. And people, they just want a fair shot. That's all they want. They want a fair shot. And this Republican budget will put health care even farther out of reach for these families. This Republican plan will also make it harder for Vermonters to get the mental health care coverage that they need. We have a crisis of anxiety and depression and loneliness in this country. And I do not understand why at this time, when there is so much need on the ground, why we would pass a resolution that would strip away resources from the working and the middle class. And it doesn't have to be like this. It really doesn't. These are choices. This isn't about fighting waste or fraud or abuse. It's about kicking people when they're down and taking the money for health care and giving it away to extremely wealthy people who don't need it. My amendment is simple. It would stop Republicans from taking away health care from Americans. And this should not be a controversial idea. Taking away health care from working people is just it's so low. You know, last night, Elon Musk, he retweeted something that referred to people in this country who rely on federal programs as the parasite class. That should reveal the kind of contempt we're talking about here. The parasite class. I don't think that my parents, because they're on Social Security, are part of the parasite class. I don't think my neighbor who is on Medicaid is part of the parasite class. So when my colleagues sit here and talk about Elon Musk in all of these glowing terms, I want you to think about who's he standing up for and who is he kicking in the teeth. I don't know anyone in my district that I would refer to as part of the parasite class. I urge my colleagues to get right with themselves and to join us in making sure that we can guarantee health care, affordable health care for all Americans. Doctors' visits shouldn't just be for the wealthy. I urge my colleagues to support this amendment. Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
I'd like to thank Ms. Balint for her comments. Is there a member who would like to claim the time in opposition to the amendment? Mr. Carey is recognized for 7 minutes.
Mr. Chair, I want to thank you, and I'm probably the newest member on this committee. And actually, I see my dear friend, Representative Marcy Kaptur from Toledo down there. Marcy and I have always believed that we can agree to disagree, but we do not have to be disagreeable. And it's something that we do in Ohio, and it's something that I hope that this body one day will do as a complete entity. Listen, our national debt is unsustainable and threatens the fiscal national security of our country. The gross national debt surpasses $36 trillion, 36 trillion, equaling a staggering 123% of our gross domestic product. This current level of indebtedness exceeds World War II levels of 119% and has doubled the average level of indebtedness since 1946. According to the Congressional Budget Office, the debt will increase to $59 trillion by 2035, when it will equate to 123% of our GDP. Now, we throw these numbers out. So a lot of people don't understand. What's the difference between a million? What's the difference between a billion? What's the difference between a trillion? So let me just put it so folks back home, as we're all sitting here not being home with our families, let me just try to put out in terms of time what those numbers means. $1 million equates to essentially, if you put it in time, 11.6 days. $1 billion equates to 31.7 years. So when we use the term trillion, what does that actually mean in terms of time? If you use it in seconds, that is 31,688 years. These are staggering numbers, my friends. The time for Congress to act is now. The longer we wait to rein in our out-of-control spending, the more significant the reforms will be needed to made to right-size the spiraling debt that we have. The primary driver of our unsustainable spending driving our national debt is mandatory spending, which is spending on autopilot that continues without congressional action. The Committee on Energy and Commerce and Ways and Means play key roles in the effort to right-size our mandatory spending and put our country on a pathway to fiscal security. In fact, over the next 10 years, mandatory outlays for the program under the jurisdiction of these committees will total remember my time, $57 trillion. That's almost 58 trillion. The instructions of these two committees to reduce the deficit by $808 billion, which is a mere 1.5% reduction in these committees' mandatory spending over the next 10 years. Congress often makes it easy task difficult. We all see that. We always have. But I am confident that we can accomplish this small reduction in the rate of growth of mandatory spending programs under the Energy and Commerce and Ways and Means committees. Improper payments, which represent waste, fraud, and abuse, total about $453 billion in fiscal year 2023. Energy and Commerce and Ways and Means can meet their goal by reducing the mandatory spending for these programs under their jurisdiction by 2% by simply reducing waste, fraud, and abuse. I don't think anybody disagrees that that's not a good thing. Striking the instructions of these three committees will remove the opportunity to make common sense reforms to critical programs to reduce our out-of-control mandatory spending. It is our duty to our children, and for somebody like me who's missing their children tonight because we're going to be here till 9 o'clock, that's a very important thing. To take this moment to put our country on the path to fiscal security and prosperity that strikes the taking the steps needed to reform our mandatory spending. Mr. Chairman, so I urge a no vote on this amendment. But Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to submit one-pagers from both the House Budget Committee listing the total amounts of mandatory spending and proper payments, unauthorized spending within the Committees of Energy and Commerce and Ways and Means.
Yeah, without objection.
All right, so two one-pagers from the House Budget listing the total amounts of mandatory spending and proper payments and unauthorized spending in the Committees on Energy and Commerce and Ways and Means. Mr. Chairman, it is an honor to be back on this committee, and I appreciate on both sides of the aisle, the Democrats and Republicans. We're going to work together. We're going to get some things done. Anybody that knows me from Ways and Means knows that's the way I operate. But at this point, I just want to thank you all for being here because we've got a very important job to do for the American public over the next few hours. Let's get it done. With that, I'd like to yield to my dear friend, Mr. Roy, for 30 seconds.
I appreciate the gentleman. I would just add a couple things in response to these healthcare accusations. That the problem we got with Medicaid right now is all the reports you look at show that the expansion has been linked to longer wait for appointments, slower ambulance response times, greater delays in the emergency room, and significant increase in costs overall to the entire system. We're not serving people well, and people know this. And I was happy to see that, and we just saw that Bobby Kennedy was confirmed today, and that is great news for where we're headed. And when Bobby was asked about whether he still, quote, supports single payer, he said, no, I saw the absolute and total failure of the expansion of Medicaid as an indication as to why single payer would fail. And so we're looking to reform the system to make it work. When we talk about health care, we shouldn't have $25,000 a year, which is the current average for a family of four, as what the expenditure is between businesses and families going into the pockets of health insurance companies we now have insurance-run, government-regulated health management. We don't have health care. So you want to actually fix all this, we need to actually have reforms and allow states to be innovative and be able to put innovation back into healthcare. There's a lot we can do here, and our budget is designed to accomplish those objectives. I'd yield back.
Thank you. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Gentleman yields. Ms. Balint is recognized for 1 minute to close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Carey, I want to say I feel your pain. My kids are also disappointed that I will not be coming home tonight, so I understand. We do have a national debt problem. I agree with you. So why wouldn't we ask those who have so much more than the rest of us to pay more? Why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we ask them to pay more to help us close this gap? I want to wrap up by saying there are millions and millions of Americans who rely on us to be their eyes and ears in this room. We have to put working people and middle-class Americans at the center of the work that we do here, not billionaires, not wealthy corporations. Nobody on my side of the aisle ran for office to give massive tax breaks to the wealthiest Americans while the rest of us are struggling to eke out a living. Our people back home are counting on us to stand with them. I asked again for people to support my amendment, and I yield back.
Gentleman is back, Ms. Balint.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Ranking Member Boyle. Here's the deal. So we're 4 weeks in to the Trump administration, and Republicans in Congress are betraying not just the middle class, but working people across this country. Republicans have the House, they have the Senate, they have the White House, and they could be passing legislation to make your life more affordable. They could be working to bring down the costs on groceries, prescription drugs, housing, but instead, Trump is shutting down vital programs that protect and support Americans across this country, and Republicans are letting him do it. Just this week, the Trump administration shut down the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, the agency that's responsible for protecting us from waste, fraud, and abuse. The CFPB is one of the few places in government actually charged with standing up to the big banks and the corporations who've ripped off consumers. It has sent $21 billion back to those victims of corporate crimes. Every single state has benefited from the work of the CFPB. Shutting it down, I believe, reveals a deep, deep contempt and cynicism. This president should be laser focused on bringing down costs for Americans and making sure everyone can live a life of security and dignity. But instead what we are seeing is this administration is taking a wrecking ball to the programs that provide Americans with relief and just some economic security. And again, Republicans are letting him do it. The Republican budget resolution is a deep betrayal of working people in all of our districts. My colleagues have proposed a budget roadmap that gives massive tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans and corporations. And how will they pay for the rich getting richer? By making deep cuts to Medicaid and food assistance programs. They are kicking the poor and the middle class to give the ultra wealthy another unneeded break. So who are those people that are going to be affected? Here are the people I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about a woman in South Royalton, Vermont, who called my office. And she told me that she prepaid for all of her home heating oil, but now she's being charged an additional 10% on top of that because the company fears the trade war that's going to be coming with Canada. I'm thinking about the families on Head Start that are calling my office saying they don't know if they're going to have an education program for their kids because Trump froze the federal funding. It creates hardship and anxiety for people who are just trying to make ends meet. What has happened these 4 weeks is a clear indication of who Trump cares about and who he is not thinking about. But I'm thinking about all the small businesses that have called my office to say that they would be absolutely crushed by a trade war with Canada. They need predictability. They need stability. Everyone who runs a small business knows that because it's such a tight margin. Trump's recklessness and the Republicans' silence about it is a kick in the teeth to working people and small business owners in all of our districts. And look, it's clear from the chaos and the confusion that Republicans are really trying to bury the details. We know what they're trying to do here. They have to cut trillions of dollars of programs in their scheme that people rely on to get the rich their tax cuts that they're demanding. The wealthy in this country are doing just fine. They don't need any more advantages. They don't need a hand up. And certainly not if it means cutting aid to farmers, cutting food programs, cutting Medicaid so that your mother or grandmother can't afford a nursing home. because that's the stark reality of it. You go after Medicaid, you're hurting your mom or your grandma who can't age with dignity because billionaires need another tax cut. 71% of Americans believe the system is rigged, and they are not wrong. The extremely wealthy in this country have been coddled, and the working class and the middle class have been cheated. The social contract that binds us together has been broken. In 1973, the top 1% took home 9% of the income. But today, it's 27%. Over a quarter of the income in this country going to the richest. It's obviously unfair and has created such deep frustration and anger in this country. By supporting another massive tax break to the wealthiest, my Republican colleagues will be voting for more hardships for working class Americans. Don't let the betrayal continue. I urge my colleagues to reject this. I yield back. Mr. Speaker, Russia invaded the sovereign nation of Ukraine. That is the cold, hard truth of it. Vladimir Putin is the aggressor. And I stand here on the floor to say our president will not rewrite the past. Putin has mercilessly continued this war for over 3 years now, a war that has led to immeasurable suffering for Ukraine and a shocking death toll of both Ukrainians and Russians. And the region is awash in blood because of him. And now the United States stands with Russia and North Korea against Ukraine and all of our allies in Europe. It's sick. We are standing with dictators and against our allies. I never thought I would see the day when our president would be a puppet for a dictator. To my Republican colleagues, did you ever imagine that you would be in a party that stands on the sides of dictators or on the sides of a country who kills journalists, with an authoritarian accused of war crimes, a man who assassinates his political opponents? Aren't you embarrassed by what you've become? It's
the gentleman's time has expired.
To watch my colleagues side with Russia because Trump said so. I yield back.
Members are reminded to refrain from engaging in personalities toward the president. For what purpose does the gentleman?
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to the Republican budget. Here's the deal. Republicans have the House, they have the Senate, they have the White House, and they could be passing legislation to actually make your lives better, to lower costs on groceries, on prescription drugs. They could be lowering the cost of housing. But instead, they are attacking the very programs that working and middle-class families rely on this country. It is a betrayal. We were sent here, all of us, we were sent here to work on behalf of the people back home. We were sent here to lower costs for people, to alleviate suffering. And I know that my colleagues were as well. So I ask you, why are they letting Trump do this? Why? This Republican budget doesn't do anything to address the costs that working people are facing. They have proposed a budget that gives massive, massive tax cuts to the wealthiest and corporations in this country. And how will they pay for it? They will pay for it by making deep cuts to Medicare to the tune of $880 billion and deep cuts to SNAP benefits. That's right, taking food away from families who need it. And they will be increasing the deficit. So it is long past time for them to stop lecturing us about the debt when they know full well that their math is not mathing. They are adding to the deficit with this program, and they are literally giving the money away to the wealthiest who do not need it. When I vote on this Republican budget, I will be thinking of all the working families back home in Vermont, people who sent me here to work on their behalf, not against them. I'm thinking of families who worry that they won't have Head Start. I'm thinking about the people who, thank you so much. I'm thinking about the small businesses in Vermont who have reached out to me to say that Trump's proposed tax war with Canada, tariff war, is going to crush them. I'm thinking about the 150,000 Vermonters who are dependent on Medicaid. I urge my colleagues to reject this unfair budget, and I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Pennsylvania reserves. Gentleman from Texas.
Today we've heard a lot of different legal theories about interpreting the Constitution, and at times I know it feels a little bit like a law school lecture. So I'd like to kind of cut through the legalese and clearly focus on something that I find deeply troubling. What Republicans are offering is a plan to redefine who gets to be American. And it's a big step towards a country where Americanness itself applies to only a privileged few, and a country where future and past generations are relegated to an underclass status. They're trying to stake out who is a real American, and it will leave a whole lot of people out. And this, I think, is a frightening road to go down. The arguments we've heard have been with us since our founding, as you pointed out, Professor Frost. The Dred Scott decision changed the common law understanding of birthright citizenship for all. It enabled slave owners to use the law to take away citizenship, to take away identity, to take away the freedom of Black people. The 14th Amendment and the Civil Rights Act of 1866 were a direct response to Dred Scott. The law grants citizenship to people born in this country, plain and simple. Yet here we are, over 150 years later, talking about how maybe the straightforward language of the law could possibly or should actually be used to deny citizenship for often people of color. Ms. Frost, did the framers of the 14th Amendment intend to extend birthright citizenship to the children of slaves and other non-citizens?
Yes, the Reconstruction Congress could not have been clearer. They used clear language, and their discussions that followed made this clear. They said, of course, they wanted to overrule Dred Scott, which included giving citizenship to all enslaved Americans, including those who had arrived illegally because they'd been illegally imported after the laws prohibited it. They were the illegal aliens of the day. The Reconstruction Congress said, we want them to have citizenship. The second group, explicitly discussed, was the children of immigrants, in particular, the children of Chinese immigrants. That was the intention of the Reconstruction Congress, and they achieved that through clear language.
Thank you. Through clear language. And citizenship was based on where you were born, correct? And not actually the identity of your parents.
Of course. We are a country that doesn't visit the sins of the father on the child. We believe in the idea that all people born are equally American because they are born in the United States. Our Constitution rejected titles of nobility explicitly. We, of course, rejected a hereditary monarchy. America is about birthplace. It's not about ancestry or lineage.
So is it safe to say that the 14th Amendment enshrined citizenship for an entire class of people and their ancestors?
Yes, of course. And any other rule would require a test of lineage and ancestry for every new child born in the United States. I'd like to quickly add 33 countries have birthright citizenship in response to Congressman Hunt's question, including Mexico and Canada. We are not outliers.
Exactly. I'm so glad you brought that up because I had it in my notes to bring that up as well. So what if the Supreme Court decides that the 14th Amendment actually does not give citizenship to children born in this country to non-citizens? What if the Supreme Court made that ruling? Where does that leave the descendants of those who've been granted birthright citizenship?
Yeah, I mean, it would unwind the citizenship of the entire country. We are a nation of immigrants. A very significant majority of us trace back, really other than Native Americans, trace back our lineage to an immigrant, parent, grandparent. 5% of our military are the children of immigrants. Now, all of us, when we have a baby, the first thing we'd have to do is produce proof of our citizenship. Imagine a generation from now, It wouldn't be good enough to show your own birth certificate. You'd have to show the lineage. This is exactly what the Reconstruction Congress wanted to prevent, and it's exactly the result that Dred Scott wanted.
I appreciate that so much. So let's follow this logic. Say a person's grandparents came to this country from Central Europe in the 19th century. An investigation reveals that those grandparents used false pretenses or false names at Ellis Island. Does that mean, based on what my colleagues would be saying today, that the present-day descendants of those grandparents are not citizens?
The logic of the position is that every single person who considers themselves an American, perhaps people in Congress, certainly people voting, would suddenly be under scrutiny, and any flaw in their family's immigration history, going back to the Contract Labor Act of 1885, where if you came to the U.S. with a contract to work, that was illegal. Many people violated that law in 1885. All of those people, their descendants today, could have their citizenship questioned and could be stripped of their citizenship under the executive order.
Thank you. And if I could, in conclusion, because I see that I'm out of time, doing away with birthright citizenship is an intentional choice to give this president, I believe, massive power to dictate who is and who is not an American. I yield back.
Thank the gentlelady from Vermont. Now I'll recognize the gentleman.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask you, what kind of man asks for absolute fealty and bootlicking from the people around him? What kind of man asks people to lie for him? What kind of man is so petty he can't admit obvious mistakes and lies? What kind of man mocks veterans, then callously fires them from jobs? What kind of man appeases and flatters our enemies? What kind of man puts his own needs above country? And what kind of men and women make excuses for him and lie for him and cover for him? These are the questions that are haunting me today. We need so much better than this in this moment. This is about the safety and security of our nation and our allies around the world. This is about our collective protection of our ideals. Americans of conscience, we must stand together and confront any man so wholly unsuited for what we ask of him. I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman from Ohio seek recognition?
To address the House for 1 minute and revise and extend my remarks.
I want Vermonters to understand the stakes of what's happening right now at the Department of Justice. And I know many Americans feel in this moment that they can't trust government, and I certainly understand why they might feel that way. Democracies have long struggled with rooting out public corruption, and as long as there is public trust, there are those who will betray the trust for their own power, for their own profit. So how do we combat corruption? How do we ensure the responsible use of power? Those are the things that I think about a lot and that my constituents ask me about. One of the ways that we do that is by entrusting that we have independent, ethical prosecutors to uphold the law, no matter who is in office. And I want to acknowledge and thank everyone for being here today. I especially want to acknowledge Mr. Terwilliger, who previously served the people of Vermont and the nation under the Reagan administration in various roles, including U.S. Attorney. So thank you so much for being here. Mr. Terwilliger, do you agree that one of the most effective ways to fight corruption is to establish and maintain a group of nonpartisan prosecutors who are dedicated to the rule of law?
I certainly agree with that, ma'am, and if you'll allow me just 30 seconds. When I was the U.S. Attorney in Vermont, I had no idea if my assistants were Republicans or Democrats. They were people who believed in the rule of law and applying the rule of law. And if one of them had ever come in and said, we should go after so-and-so because or on account of, I sadly have to tell you, ma'am.
If I could, just because I only give 5 minutes.
Please, let me just finish, 10 seconds. I sadly have to tell you that culture at the Department of Justice changed completely in the last 10, 15 years.
So the whole idea, so to stay with what you're saying, the whole idea behind the Department of Justice, right, is supposed to be enforcing the law without fear of favor, correct? And that's what the American people want. That's what Vermonters want. I hear that from them all the time. And that's what our Constitution actually demands. So when a U.S. attorney stands before a judge and say that they are there not to represent the people, but to represent a president, understandably, there are alarm bells that start ringing. So we're 2 months into this administration. So far, we've had a U.S. attorney publicly state that his office is composed of President Trump's lawyers, not lawyers for the people, not lawyers supporting the Constitution, but President Trump's lawyers. We've seen political purges of nonpartisan career civil servants because they did their jobs, including those who were involved in the January 6th prosecutions. And we've seen a shocking quid pro quo involving the indicted mayor of New York. So you said so yourself. It should not be about partisanship within the office. And I applaud you for that. So thank you for being here. I'd like to turn now to Professor Besky. Professor Besky, under the legislation offered by the majority, specifically Section 1456C, the Attorney General could represent a federal official in any case subject to removal under the statute. Is it true that this provision could make the Department of Justice the personal counsel for the president, the vice president, or for federal officials in state criminal or civil cases? Is there a danger there?
There is certainly a danger because typically the norm is that there's a separation there.
Does that terrify you to contemplate that?
It certainly doesn't help me sleep at night.
Okay, all right, I'll take that as in the affirmative. I do think that it goes strongly against what Americans want, what Vermonters want. They want to make sure, without fear or favor, they want to make sure we're doing this in a way that is not corrupt. But there's, in fact, what I think another important key element here, which is how the public perceives those attorneys charged with enforcing the law. So how important, again, to Professor Besky, how important is the public trust in those who enforce anti-corruption laws?
It's extremely important.
Tell me more.
It is, if the public doesn't have trust in our federal justice system, in the justice system, we don't have very much left.
It doesn't hold together, does it?
It doesn't hold together.
It doesn't hold together. If the people don't believe that justice is blind, anti-corruption efforts are doomed to fail. And authoritarians thrive in that environment where there is no public trust. So what my Republican colleagues have done for many years, and in this committee as well, they've attacked prosecutors, they've attacked judges, they've dragged public servants down here for baseless, in my opinion, baseless depositions, sent letters full of baseless accusations, blasted theories, many of them hateful, all over the internet. And what happens then is that Americans become incredibly skeptical, cynical about there is any such thing as a justice system without fear or favor, and I think that should scare all of us. I understand, Mr. Chair, I'm over time. I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady from Vermont. I'm now going to recognize the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Onder. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all the witnesses for being here today. Last June, the attorney...
It's going to take me a minute to adjust here.
We won't count the time again.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We've heard for months now that this administration only hires the very best people. Really? Exhibit A. This is the guy? This guy? The guy who keeps swinging around his big chainsaw? This is the guy who's going to fix government? Let me state for the record what millions of Americans can already see with their own eyes and what Trump's own cabinet can see and what my colleagues across the aisle are hoping nobody will ask them about. Elon Musk has no idea what he's doing. He's fired people who guard our nuclear arsenal. He's gone after the people protecting us from bird flu and Ebola. His own emails and directives contradict each other. He erroneously triple-counted contracts to inflate the Doge numbers. He's had to remove faulty claims or replace them with a page saying, "Coming soon." The incompetence is shocking, and it makes us all less safe. From exposing our personal private information to leaving Americans abroad, stranded, to kicking our veterans to the curb. We deserve so much better than this. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is from the Athens Banner Herald titled, "Details on what University of Georgia is paying new track coach, raises for tennis coach and hoop assistants."
Without objection, now recognize the gentlewoman from Vermont.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. College sports are unique in that they unite and they inspire parts of our country that may not have a professional team. And we saw that firsthand in Vermont as our Catamounts electrified the entire state on the way to winning the Division I 2024 Men's Soccer National Championship. Go Cats. So college sports are exciting. They inspire us. They also pose a dilemma, particularly when we talk about big-time football and basketball. Is it right that a multi-billion-dollar industry does not pay its workers? And I want to appreciate that you're all here today giving your valuable time. I want to direct that question to Mr. Cooper. What's your perspective on that intense contradiction?
No, it is fundamentally wrong that they do not pay their workers.
And so one of the things that I want to lift up right now, Mr. Cooper, is that you're also somebody who has spoken in the past about the mental health impact on college athletes. I just want to give you a few minutes to talk about that. It's something that's very important to me.
Thank you. And for me as well, that's why I got into this. When I was a student at Washington State University, our quarterback, Tyler Holinsky, my classmate, died by suicide. And that is what compelled me to work with his family, to advocate for mental health. And through that, I was elected the SAC president, the Student Athlete Advisory president at Washington State. And the more I pushed for mental health policies at the school and in the conference, the more pushback I got, and they refused to do anything or to listen to our concerns. And the reality is this business is so lucrative that there is so much money being thrown at coaches, they put that pressure on athletes, and there is not, the NCAA has a rule that says you can only spend 20 hours a week on sport. But a Pac-12 study found that athletes are working 50 hours a week, and there's nothing stopping them from doing 60, 70. There's no accountability in the system as a whole. And so that is...
It's tied up in this issue, isn't it?
Yeah. From a mental health standpoint, if you are working 50 hours a week, 60 hours a week, and you also have to go to class, it is ripe for abuse, and athletes' mental health is suffering. And college athlete suicide rate has doubled over the last 20 years. And that is largely in part due to the fact that there are no enforceable safety mandates in this business. Mm-hmm. There are only guidelines and recommendations, but when a coach actually breaks the rules, there's no accountability whatsoever, and there's no mechanism for athletes to hold them accountable.
I really, really appreciate what you've just said here, because I think it's important for us to focus on who should we be looking out for. We should be looking out for those student athletes. So thank you so much. It does seem unfair to me and many folks here in this committee hearing that young athletes put their bodies and their minds on the line for mass entertainment, and yet they're not paid directly for their work. Now, I've heard some good discussion here today on what is, in fact, a pretty complex topic. There's a lot to consider regarding NIL deals, looking at NCAA antitrust exemption, and whether we ought to consider these athletes as employees under labor law. And I know that it's important for us to ask who is best equipped to handle these complicated questions. And I would argue that the experts at the agencies that Congress has empowered to handle employment issues and enforcement of antitrust laws are the ones best equipped. So I'm talking about the National Labor Relations Board. I'm talking about the Federal Trade Commission. I'm talking about the Department of Justice. And the courts have a role here too. As we've heard, we may have a settlement this year providing for the payment of college athletes. Now, it would be great for Americans if we had these institutions ready to help us sort out these issues, but we don't, because we have an administration right now who is partnering with Elon Musk to dismantle some of these agencies. We should be talking about whether we owe college athletes additional compensation, but we should also be talking about the agencies that the Trump administration is illegally dismantling, the ones that Congress has empowered to solve problems like college athlete compensation.
We don't have an independent board in charge of determining whether these athletes can collectively bargain. Why not? Because the president illegally fired a board member and the entire board is now deadlocked. At the FTC, we've seen antitrust division staff terminated, and for some odd reason, they're forced to move to the USAID building. And that agency is also deadlocked and in chaos because of this administration's actions. I don't even have enough time, because I see I'm running short here, on the abuses happening at the Department of Justice. My point is this: let's keep the main thing the main thing. We have agencies that can help us to look at these complex issues, and right now we are not funding those agencies to do their jobs. And I yield back. Thank you.
Gentlewoman yields back. Gentleman from Virginia is now recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank the chairman for holding this hearing. Thank our witnesses for being here as well. I want to echo what the gentlelady said. This is about the student athletes.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, I want to clarify something for some of my colleagues and for leaders across this country, because there seems to be some confusion. There is a big difference between taking a knee and bending a knee. Taking a knee shows that you can hold many truths at once. You can love our country and believe that there is still more work to do. It shows that you're willing to do that work and to live up to our country's ideals. But bending a knee is something quite different. Bending a knee is capitulation. It's what you do when you've given up, when you've lost your fight, when you've lost your way, when you are not willing to show courage, to show up, to speak up. Taking a knee, you got skin in the game. Bending a knee, you have given in. You have lost your self-respect. We were not elected to be obedient, to submit, to cower. We were not sent here to worship one man. We have no kings in America. We were sent here to work on behalf of the people.
The gentlelady's time has expired.
If you're not risking anything, you are not being brave. Show some grit and stand up for your people. I yield back.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California seek recognition?
Given that Mr. Roy went over by almost 2 minutes, I would like to give the ranking member a minute before I begin.
The gentleman, you're yielding a minute to the gentleman.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you to the gentlelady from Vermont. I just want to be clear about this. First of all, I want to align myself with members on both sides who have found your testimony, Ms. Romero, very important and very disturbing. And we all agree that gang members should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law, and if they're here unlawfully in the country, they should be deported. But the idea that that should become the basis for a mass roundup and deportation of people who've never been charged with anything, who have no criminal record, strikes me as absolutely preposterous. And the administration, at least, was willing to come forward to say, okay, they have the wrong person. This was a mistake to have him, but now, c'est la vie, I suppose, he's stuck in El Salvador under a dictator who throws people into a prison that engages in torture. And my colleagues would rather go all the way down to the end of the field with Donald Trump rather than admit that that is a blatant violation of American due process and all of our constitutional values. I mean, that's just extraordinary to me that members of the House Judiciary Committee would be taking that position. That's a very serious problem. Now, Judge Boasberg, who's a conservative judge who was appointed to the bench by President Bush, correctly determined that the Alien Enemy Act of 1798 doesn't apply. It had only been used before in that original Alien Sedition Act period, World War I and World War II. It is for wartime. It is for the deporting of foreign nationals who belong to enemy states, or if there's a military invasion of the country. And it doesn't apply, so he said, we've got to use the Immigration Naturalization Act, but that requires a due process hearing. But that's too much for my colleagues who can evince no sympathy at all for this father of a 5-year-old with autism who has been sent to another country. Now, I don't know, because we're not a criminal court, whether he's done anything, but I do know, based on court records, he has no criminal record. He's not been convicted of anything. And suddenly they're saying, well, he's a member of MS-13. He had an asylum petition, which I'll enter for the record, which showed that he was actually being harassed and persecuted by a criminal gang, which was why he originally came to America. And the court determined, although his application for asylum was time barred, nonetheless, he has established past persecution based on a protected ground, and he has established the presumption of a well-founded fear of future persecution. So maybe you guys know something about the case I don't know, but that's why I believe in due process, because I think a court should be hearing this. I thank the gentlelady for her indulgence and her kindness.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've heard the suggestion from some of our witnesses today that because President Trump eked out a narrow win-in, he should have the right to do whatever he wants with no checks on his power. And I find this deeply disturbing. As a former civics teacher, it feels like we failed somewhere along the way. Presumably, we've all had some basic civics education, and I'm hearing a shocking misunderstanding of how the Constitution works. Professor Shaw, thanks so much for being here. Let's briefly reestablish the fundamentals here. We have 3 branches of government, correct?
Correct.
Executive, legislative, and judicial branch, correct?
Correct.
And under our constitutional order, the head of the executive branch, the president, generally must obey orders by judges, correct?
Absolutely.
And one of the ways Congress oversees judges and the president is through impeachment or removal from office for violating the law or other egregious behavior. Is that correct?
Treason, bribery, other high crimes and misdemeanors, correct.
Thank you. But Congress does not remove judges because of a disagreement with how they ruled. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And why is that?
Judicial independence requires the judges not be constantly afraid that they will be removed from office if they issue a decision that is unpopular or that is, opposed to the interests of the political powers or that runs against the political winds. Judicial independence requires judges to be confident and secure in their rulings and not fear the consequences of those rulings other than reversal on appeal. That's a consequence judges can and should fear, but that really is the primary consequence.
And as you've said, this has a chilling effect. This entire presidency so far is about having a chilling effect on the way that government works. The House must not take up impeachment resolutions based on anything but serious misconduct or illegal behavior. Yet Republicans, including people on this committee who claim to respect the Constitution, have introduced impeachment resolutions against judges because they don't like how judges did their job. They've introduced 7 impeachment resolutions so far. I'm sure there are more to come. Trump and Musk have publicly called for the impeachment of judges that they just don't like. Just by introducing these impeachment resolutions, my colleagues have attacked and weakened the independent judiciary. Does a weakened judiciary, Professor Shaw, endanger Americans' constitutional rights?
The courts are a key guarantor.
The gentlelady's time has expired, but I will give indulgence. You may answer.
I apologize. I didn't see. Sorry. I think that an independent judiciary has been and continues to be a key guarantor of all of our rights. And so anything that threatens judicial independence is a threat to all of us.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. And I will just say in closing, I taught my students for years the Constitution requires that we respect the rule of law and not the rule of one man. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, gentlelady. With that, we go to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Democrats love to talk about democracy. They claim Donald Trump is a threat to it.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. Now
Mr. Chairman, I have the unanimous consent request.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to enter into the record an article, AI Watch Global Regulatory Tracker, that details how many more regulations than the U.S. does on AI development and deployment.
Without objection, the gentlewoman from Vermont is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Commissioner Bedoya, thank you so much for being here, and Commissioner Slaughter, it's really nice to see you. Commissioner Bedoya, as commissioner at the FTC, I think your experience on competition, artificial intelligence, and how these things affect everyday people is extremely important to this discussion. And we all understand that we're in the early days of what may be a massively transformational technological moment. It's plausible that this may be like the emergence of the internet, the mobile phone, or really even electricity. But it's so important that we don't lose sight of the central point here, which is how does this technology help or hurt working people? That's what I'm focused on. Commissioner Bedoya, you spent a great deal of time as FTC commissioner outside of DC, traveling around the country, hearing from people. And I want to know, have you heard a sense of concern from people, working people, about how AI is impacting their lives?
Sure. So I confess a lot of my roundtables are focused on, groceries, pharmacy, that kind of thing.
Everyday costs.
What's that?
Everyday costs.
Everyday costs, that's right. I will say a couple things on this. A lot of people look at what happened around the actors and writers' strikes, and they say, oh, that's just a Hollywood thing. But entry-level actors and entry-level writers don't make that much money. And you had situations where people were quite worried, and with good reason, that the cost of selling your first script was going to be to submit, all your work to be fed into one of these AIs, so that there would be no need to hire you in the future. I also do think there have been a lot of concerns. I think my colleague Commissioner Slaughter has done a roundtable on this, on the use of price-fixing algorithms in rental housing markets.
That's where I'm going.
Yes, and that's a real concern.
That's exactly where I'm going. Let's jump to that, because this is a deep concern of mine. Could you tell us in real terms, because you had talked about earlier that it's not just the algorithm itself in terms of RealPage, but there seems to be instances that we can look to. There seems to be evidence that there is actually some collusion happening here. And that's something that I'm deeply concerned about, and we all should. There is a crisis of housing in this country, and renters are over a barrel right now. They don't have a lot of options. So can you talk a little bit about how this is impacting regular people just in terms of trying to afford their rental housing?
Sure. So the allegations in this space are that these algorithms don't just offer the exact right amount of an increase so that a renter swallows the increase rather than tries to find a different place. There's allegations of actual overt in the RealPage lawsuit, calling between landlords to coordinate. But there's also allegedly information sharing, creating a pool of data that these landlords can draw on to increase rent without saying, while being able to say, oh, we never called each other. One really interesting point here is sometimes antitrust harms, because they're a little complex, can get a little technical. Mm-hmm. I'll just point out that one of the corporate landlords in the RealPage suit is a company called Greystar. FTC is also simultaneously suing Greystar for packing people's rent checks with these fake hidden fees like, oh, you want no cockroaches in your apartment? You got to pay extra for that. And so
pay extra for no cockroaches, huh?
Precisely. And so you see, anti-competitive conduct arm in arm with conduct that hurts consumers, in my view, pretty obviously.
So I do think it's important in this hearing, as we talk about the importance of not stifling innovation, to at the same time be able to hold both truths. We can be careful in our regulations. We can be careful in the guardrails that we're putting on. But I don't think anyone here, at least I hope not, that anyone on the antitrust committee would be supportive of landlords colluding to raise the price of rent. And I know in some instances we've seen that this AI dynamic pricing scheme has led to increases of over $800 over the course of a year, of not just these hidden fees that we're talking about, but the prices that they're paying for rent itself. And of course, you've talked about how essential workers are being replaced in key industries, where we see patients illegally being denied care because of an AI-based recommendation, where artists are being robbed of their work. And I just have to say, we have got to remember the importance of following the law when it comes to having FTC commissioners. And I think it's outrageous that you and Commissioner Slaughter were illegally removed from your positions. We need you on the watch to take care of my renters back home in Vermont who were being screwed over.
Gentlewoman's time is
I yield back.
And the distinguished lady from Vermont, Ms. Balint, is recognized for questioning.
Thank you to the chairs. First of all, I really want to acknowledge at the top the courage that it took for each of you to come here today. It shows an incredible amount of fortitude. These are incredibly scary times, and it's not easy to stand up and speak out against authoritarians. It's not easy to stand up and speak against the president. So all you have to do is look at our Republican colleagues, both in the House and the Senate, who are remaining silent. So the fact that you're willing to be here, to show your face, to speak up for what's right, it matters. And I have to tell you that this is a critical moment right now, and you are doing the right thing, even though it's frightening, because you're giving all of us just a little bit of hope in these incredibly dark times. Hope that we're going to be able to turn the tide on this. Hope that more people will see you and stand up to the corruption and the cronyism. And just a little bit of hope that we'll remember that who we are as a people, that we're beholden to the rule of law. And as my colleagues have said, that we are not beholden to a king or a dictator. So know that you are doing the right thing, even though it feels terrifying. Authoritarians like Trump have nothing but contempt for the democratic process and for due process. They mock the principle of accountability because they have none. They portray themselves as victims of so-called lawfare so they can discredit an entire system. That's what this is about. This is about discrediting the system. So we can't believe in lawyers. We can't believe in institutions. And that's terrifying. That is convincing all of us that the rot goes so deeply that the foundation of our very democracy can't be trusted. Ms. Cohen, in your resignation letter, which I have to say was such a shining light, you talk about fear and powerlessness that motivated some of these law firms in the country to cave. And that's what they did. They caved. They are bootlicking. They are bending a knee. Make no mistake, that's what's going on here. How is it that some of the most prestigious and powerful law firms in this country feel that they have to act in this way?
I wish I had a good answer for you, but when I read things like Brad Karp saying that it was an existential crisis for a firm whose profit per equity partner was over $7 million last year, I don't know what to tell you. I apologize.
That's right. That's exactly right. It's not an existential crisis where they're going to lose some money. We're talking about the rule of law. It's disgusting. And the courage that you have to be here when so many of your senior colleagues say nothing and grovel to a would-be king speaks volumes about your integrity. We're in strange times. There were protests across the nation. This weekend, the Chief Justice of the Vermont State Supreme Court, who, trust me, does not usually comment on political matters, he said, quote, "No prior administration has taken such concerted action against the bar. An effort to erode an institutional pillar designed to check abuse of power." When the Chief Justice is finding his voice and speaking publicly, you would think that some law firms could do the same when it's just about the almighty dollar. I want to conclude by saying Trump and all of his enablers, whether they're in Congress or whether they're at these law firms, seem to think that they can outrun this, that somehow we're going to ride this out. We're not going to ride this out. It's not going away. It's only when good people stand up and say, no, I refuse to bow. And my hat is off to all of you. You are showing courage that so many people in this moment are not. And I'm going to be able to go home this weekend, the end of this week, and talk to my two kids. I got 2 high school students.
And they're going to want to know that there are good people doing the right thing, and I'll be able to tell them about this. I yield back.
Is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to strike the last word. House Republicans have spent the last 3 months insisting that they are the party of working people, that they care about the struggles of working people. And now they have control of the House, they have control of the Senate, they have control of the White House, and they actually could be doing something about it. And yet, instead of passing legislation to make life easier and more affordable, they are doing the opposite. This bill is a betrayal of working people. It's a betrayal of the middle class. So let's start with the overall plan here. Republicans are proposing a massive cut to social services in this country. Services that my constituents in Vermont rely on. I'm thinking about the nearly 164,000 Vermonters on Medicaid who are at risk of losing their health care. The Republican legislation means parents and grandparents who rely on Medicaid for long-term care and nursing homes for their family members. They're going to have that rug pulled out from under them. It means that rural hospitals, not just in Vermont, but in all of your rural districts, are going to close too. It's just a math problem. Medicaid goes away, rural hospitals close. The Republican majority and Donald Trump want to kick working families to the curb and give people who don't need another massive tax break another leg up. The wealthiest 1% in this country do not need more advantages. They have plenty. These cuts are a crystal clear indication of where your priorities lie. Now let's talk about what is on the agenda for this committee specifically. With this slice of the reconciliation plan, judiciary Republicans will be doubling down on Trump's lawlessness and cruel immigration policies, fueling Trump's attacks on our independent judiciary and making it easier for big businesses to get away with price gouging and making it more expensive for regular people to survive. Today, my Republican colleagues are voting for sky-high fees for folks who are just trying to comply with immigration laws. Does anyone really think that somebody who is fleeing to our country for relief as a refugee can afford hundreds or thousands of dollars to seek asylum or their day in court? It's nonsense, and you know it. And with these fees leveraged on those who can least afford it, Republicans are dedicating billions of dollars to hire and empower an immigration enforcement reign of terror. They want to greenlight more masked agents, more hooded people, more unmarked cars, yanking people off the streets, deporting them without any due process. This is America. This is what actually sets us apart from people in the rest of the world, is due process. You can laugh all you want, but if we don't stand up for due process, we are not the United States of America anymore. The bill in front of us will allow Republicans to further insulate this administration when it flagrantly violates the law and the Constitution, making it harder for courts to stop illegal actions. My Republican colleagues are once again using their position, instead of helping working people, they're using their position to attack judges, to attack the very foundations of what makes us Americans. And you're trying to shutter the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, making it harder for us to enforce our antitrust laws. Let's talk about fairness. Let's talk about competition. Let's talk about all my small businesses who just want a fair shot. Why would you go after the FTC and make it harder for small businesses to survive in this landscape? You all talk about competition. You all talk about a healthy process in this country, to have competition, to have a healthy economy, and then you go after the FTC. It doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't pass the straight face test. It's all more of the same in here. You are not looking out for working people. You are not standing up for small businesses. You're not standing up for rural America. You're not standing up for our rural hospitals. You're not standing up for the people who desperately need Medicaid in order to get basic health care. When I vote no on this Republican budget, I'm going to be thinking of all the working people in Vermont who sent me here to work on behalf of them, not big corporations, not authoritarians who are would-be dictators, to work on behalf of them. And I will be thinking of all of the immigrants, those who have become part of the fabric of Vermont's economy, and our communities who are heartlessly being attacked by my Republican colleagues today. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentlelady.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a short video I'd like to show.
Nice.
A family traumatized after armed federal agents busted into their home as they were sleeping and took almost everything they own. Problem is, they were not the people agents were supposed to be looking for.
News 4's Spencer Humphrey is here with their frightening ordeal. Spencer, what's going on here?
Yeah, well, get this. That family just moved here about 2 weeks ago from out of state, and this is how their life in Oklahoma got started. They say they told federal immigration agents they had the wrong people, but those agents kept treating them like criminals, even though they're all U.S. citizens. Fear.
I did feel at times I felt I was gonna die.
So much fear.
I kept praying. I said, God, please let me live through this moment.
Humiliation.
I was a zero. I was nothing.
Pure disbelief.
I just couldn't understand, how is this happening to us?
All just for wanting a fresh start.
Mr. Chair, on the morning of Thursday, April 24th, about 20 armed federal agents broke into a home occupied by a family of U.S. citizens in Oklahoma City who had just moved there 2 weeks prior from Maryland. ICE agents, mistaking the current occupants for the former, broke down the door, terrorized the family, and they repeatedly said, "We are citizens. You have the wrong people. We are citizens." It happened in the middle of the night. 3 children at gunpoint were forced outside to stand in the rain in their underwear while their mother pleaded with these agents to tell them what was going on. They ignored the pleas. They ripped apart the entire house. They seized cash, documents, electronics, their computers as evidence. When the family asked when they would get their stuff back, the agents responded, "Well, it could be days or it could be months." This was all a colossal mistake. The names on the warrant did not match the people who lived in the house. This is what we have created here. This is Trump's America. These were citizens who were treated like this. This is what we want you to open your eyes to. If it can happen, as we've said time and time again, if it can happen to folks with green cards, it can happen to citizens. And in Oklahoma City, we see a perfect example of that. This is what we're talking about. It's not other people. It's us. It's our neighbors. It's our friends. It's people who just moved from Maryland to Oklahoma for a better life and have their house destroyed. And they can't get answers. If we watch the rest of the news clip there, they're asking ICE, who's responsible for this? And then they're sending them to another agency, and they're sending them to another agency, and nobody is accountable for what happened to them. This is what my colleagues are trying to fund with this bill. Armed federal agents breaking into homes, even of U.S. citizens, traumatizing them, taking their possessions. This is Trump's America. That's why we continue to talk about due process. It's not some pie in the sky idea. It's what literally holds our country together. Without due process, without the belief in the Constitution, we are not Americans. That's what gives us the ability to say we are an exceptional country in the world, that everyone who lives here gets due process. And we're going to keep saying this over and over and over again for everyone who lives here. What happened to that family, once again, of American citizens in Oklahoma City should scare the hell out of all of us. And we should not be using this committee to find more money to pump into ICE so that these things can happen. This family is all of us. That's what we're trying to say today. This family is all of us. And I can't believe that in our name, on our watch, this is happening to people who live in this country. Open your eyes. Wake the hell up. I yield back.
It's back. The gentlelady from Vermont is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move to strike the last word.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Like my colleague from Georgia, I'm deeply concerned about other programs that are being cut because of this, cut that is being carried out by someone we don't even know who this person is. Nobody in here called for these cuts, as the ranking member has said, not anyone in the House, not anyone in the Senate. Nobody in the White House is taking responsibility. So somebody in DOGE made the decision to make these cuts. And one of the things that's also going to be cut, or has been cut rather, it's already happened, correct? It's already happened, is the comprehensive opioid abuse site-based program. Now, nearly 1/3 of Americans know somebody who's died of an overdose. Can you imagine? 1/3 of this country, you know somebody who's died. I know in my hometown of Brattleboro, Vermont, we've had many people who have died from substance use disorder, have been impacted so horribly from the opioid epidemic. And this cutting of these funds is going to have a devastating impact on these organizations that are working to bring us back from the brink of this destruction. This is meant to reduce opioid abuse, reduce the number of overdose fatalities, mitigate the impact on crime victims by supporting comprehensive collaborative initiatives. And I know every single member in here, every single district has been touched by the opioid crisis. And it's just shocking to me that we can't engage in a conversation here about these programs that have been cut, and we can't even identify where it's even come from, that some rogue person in DOGE who has no accountability has made these decisions for our communities. And I absolutely support this amendment. I am shocked that we can't have a conversation about programs that our constituents, that our communities desperately need. And you're right, to the member from Georgia. This is not a joke. This is deadly serious.
Will the gentlelady yield?
Absolutely.
I just wonder if the gentlelady is aware that, as we've seen in prior similar cases, certain people who have the right political juice have been able to get to DOGE to get some of these restored, but others have not.
That's right.
So as far as I can tell, the opioid grants have not been restored, the juvenile justice grants have not been restored, but other people, if they know the right person, then suddenly it's no longer waste, fraud, and abuse. Suddenly it's an urgent expenditure by co-presidents Musk and Trump. And this is just an absurd way for us to proceed. Congress is allocating the money, and they got the money, they distributed the money, and now DOGE gets rid of all of it, but then it restores it to the people who have an inside political track.
That's exactly right. And let's talk about that kind of grift, that kind of corruption, that some members of Congress can pull the strings to get funds for the people in their district, but others do not. What kind of country is this? That you can pull the strings, you can go behind the scenes, you can make a call to somebody important that can release those funds for your district. It's obscene.
if the gentlelady would indulge me one more
Absolutely.
question. I understand that Senator Grassley was able to get a program restored, but I saw that he went to a town hall meeting and his constituents were actually fighting for everybody.
That's right.
Saying that DOGE should not be allowed to sabotage all of these programs across the country. They weren't doing special pleading, but now we have certain politicians who say, I don't have the courage necessarily to take on DOGE and Elon Musk and to actually challenge Trump, but I will try to use my inside track to get grants restored in one community or one district, and that's just a dishonorable way to go.
It is dishonorable, and I agree with the ranking member that this is not what Americans want. His constituents were pissed about what he had done because they knew that we are supposed to be a collection of states that we are looking after each other. We're looking after each Americans, regardless of what zip code they live in, and it's just absolutely patently wrong that you could have a member or a senator be able to work their way around to get a program reinstated for their district, but not for everybody else. That's not how it's supposed to work in this country. I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back.
I ask consent to deliver remarks for 1 minute to rise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I'm a history teacher, so I know that we have to do everything we can to document what's happening right now, because we are at a very dangerous moment and it requires courage from every single one of us. Here's the truth of it. This national nightmare started with a series of lies. The first one being that Barack Obama was not born in this country. Then the second one, the ridiculous, easily disproved claim that the 2017 inauguration broke records that no one had ever seen before. Then the lie about the weather map and the Sharpie, and then so many other lies building up to that one big lie that you all have heard about the 2020 election. It was an obvious lie, and yet he lost over and over and over in court and continued to lie. And there was no evidence, but it didn't matter. Why didn't it matter? Because it wasn't about the evidence. It was actually a test. It was a test to signal your willingness to be loyal. If you promise to spread our lies, you can be on the team. It was actually a qualification for being able to work on that team. And slowly, like the rot in the foundation of an old farmhouse, it continued.
Time has expired.
The decay set in, and now
the gentlewoman's time. The House will be in order.
Bravery is uncomfortable, but cowardice.
The gentlewoman is no longer recognized. The gentlewoman is no longer recognized.
Price fixing suit. A press release from Berger Montague titled Plaintiffs in Elite University Price Fixing Case Settle with Caltech and John Hopkins. And then also plaintiff's memorandum of law in support of their motion for class certification in the case of Corzo versus Brown. The gentlewoman from—
Mr. Chairman, I just had one more, if I could.
Oh, go ahead.
It's just for one article entitled, Congressional Republicans' Budget Reconciliation Bill Imperils 4.4 million Pell Grant Recipients.
Without objection. The gentlewoman from Vermont is now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We should be able to work together and find bipartisan solutions to this problem. I have 2 teenagers myself. They're starting to look at colleges. I've got sticker shock, as do most parents who go through this process. And I am really worried about all of the talented students who don't even apply, not just because of the tuition or the room and board, but simply the fees in order to apply. It's out of reach for so many families, and the astronomical costs mean working people do not have a fair shot at higher education. I think that is why we have been so vocal today about the cuts to the Pell Grant program. Everyone seems to agree that the high cost of college is a real problem in this country, but we can't seem to agree on how it is that we're going to bring down tuition costs. This is the kind of things that Americans want us to be working on, to the point that my colleague was making here. They want us to come together and actually dig into the problem of how we solve this so that every student has an opportunity to go to college. But that's not actually why we're here today. It's so clear that that's not what this is actually about. Dr. Morgan, I'm so glad that you're here, and I thank you so much for your time. Can you, take us through sort of the crux of what it is that we're supposed to be doing here, which is unpacking all of this. What are the things that are driving these higher costs in education?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It differs really by sector. There are a lot of varied factors that go into college costs, but it really differs by the type of institution and the type of business model. So when we take a look at a for-profit college, they're out to maximize their profit. So the cost of providing the education is actually quite low and doesn't really drive the tuition prices. Their cost of marketing is quite high because they're trying to bring people in the door. When we think about state institutions and community colleges that are educating the majority of students who go to college in this country, studies have shown that the thing that is really driving their costs, or the cost of tuition, is state appropriations. And so that's why I've been quite focused on what federal and state aid, and local aid as well, is going to these colleges, and how what we do at the federal level impacts those state budgets. Because I think we are going to see a squeeze on state budgets that increases the price of tuition. And what we've seen in the past is that it takes a really long time to unwind that, even if we're looking at something that, that only affects a given year.
So what you're saying is true, that if we are not investing in the institutions that most of our students go to, we are compounding the problem. So I really appreciate that. When we're talking about the affordability problem, are we talking about all institutions of higher education in the United States, or is it just the Ivies?
I think there's a broad swath of colleges where the tuition is quite high and where they're using these opaque discounting models to get to a net price. But there are a lot of colleges in this country that have held their costs quite low despite, weathering the storms of state budgets and cuts to federal aid. And are really doing their best to provide an education at a transparent price to people where they can come out with as little debt as possible. I do think one thing to think about with that group of institutions and that group of students is how the costs in the rest of those students' lives have gone up.
That's right.
For community college students in particular, they're going to be affected by cuts to things like SNAP. They're also affected by the impact of things like the tariffs and the cost of living increases that's driving for families. So for them, the whole package and their indebtedness to achieve an education is going to be higher because of all of the rising costs that we're seeing right now.
I really appreciate that. It's a complicated problem. It requires a seriousness of purpose and not some sham hearing. My Republican colleagues are not here to seriously investigate the problem of college affordability. They are here to advance Donald Trump's culture war against people and institutions that he doesn't like, and to go after anyone who remotely disagrees with him. He wants to continue to silence the opposition. The reason I know this is because my Republican colleagues, every single one of them across the aisle here, voted to eliminate or reduce student aid, increase monthly student loan payments, and drive students to take out predatory private loans. So this hearing, once again, which we have seen over and over again in this committee, is to do the president's dirty work. We have real work that we should be doing to support our students, but we are preoccupied with going after the president's supposed political enemies. It's a shame, and it's a disservice to our students across this country. I yield back.
Gentlewoman yields back. Gentlewoman from Wyoming.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, our defense secretary should be one of the busiest people on the planet, defending our country, leading nearly 3 million courageous Americans in our armed forces. It's an awesome responsibility. But this week, Pete Hegseth spent his precious time deciding that a naval ship named after a veteran is just too gay for him. Harvey Milk was an American hero, a civil rights leader, the first openly gay official in California. He served his country in the Navy. He was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. He was someone who stood up for the rights and dignities of all. And he was assassinated while serving in public office. His memory is worthy of dignity and respect. Removing his name from a ship is small and it's petty, and is obviously an attempt to erase the history of anyone who shows resistance to this administration. That is what autocrats and authoritarians do. Since Secretary Hegseth took the helm, the Department of Defense has been fraught with national security risks and constant drama. I urge him to stop spending his time renaming ships because he wants to pretend that we don't exist. He should do his damn job. I yield back.
Gentlewoman's time.
Mr. Speaker, I stand here today in support of Labor leader David Huerta. The head of the SEIU California Union was arrested in Los Angeles while exercising his First Amendment rights to speech and assembly, rights that are guaranteed to all of us in the Constitution. That's what separates us from autocratic regimes around the world. The Trump administration now is going after judges, members of Congress, political opponents, students, law firms, reporters, governors, and now the leader of a powerful labor union. This is about abusing power to silence dissent. This is about generating fear to turn us against each other so we don't pay attention to this law-breaking administration. David Huerta said this after being arrested. What happened to me is not about me. This is about something much bigger. This is about how we as a community stand together and resist injustice. Hardworking people and members of our family and community are being treated like criminals. We all collectively have to object to this madness because it is not justice. I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields back. For what purpose does the gentleman?
Gentlelady from Vermont is recognized.
I have an amendment at the desk, Mr.
Clerk
Chair.
report. Point of order reserved by the gentleman from Arizona.
Amendment to the amendment in the nature.
Without objection, the amendment be considered as read. The gentlelady from Vermont is recognized to explain her amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want people to understand what's going on here today. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle are continuing their obsession with being in your kid's pediatric appointment. I find it insulting and creepy. And it's astonishing that we are allowing this even to come before the committee today. It's an attempt to interfere with your healthcare decisions for your kids. Essentially, what's going on here is they want to criminalize healthcare. These are decisions that should be made by doctors, by parents, by trans young people, not by, with all due respect, by Mr. Jordan, the chair of the committee, or by any other member of this committee. And we've been in this committee hearing today talking about the incredible amount of federal crimes on the books, and yet we are sitting here talking about adding another one for no good reason. As I alluded to earlier, this has absolutely no business in front of the committee. We have other really important work to do here, whether it's on prescription drugs, whether it's on lowering the cost of insulin, or, as my colleague said from the state of Washington, pushing back against incredible corporate greed and corruption in healthcare. These are all things worthy of our attention. In fact, these are the things that our voters want us to be focused on. But once again, no, we are here. We are beating up on trans kids and their families, and we are trying to criminalize doctors and parents. My amendment strikes the bill's prohibition on providing health care to trans youth. That's what we're talking about. We do not need to be criminalizing doctors or parents for doing what they feel like is in the best interest of the child. We need to be focused on things that our constituents are clamoring for, which is protecting Medicaid, which is making sure people have health care and food assistance. And it's frankly pretty incredible that we're here today doing this just a few weeks after, as far as I can tell, every single member except for Mr. Massey over there voted to kick some of their constituents off Medicaid and by extension shut down rural hospitals as they lose those Medicaid dollars. And if you think that we won't all be impacted by massive cuts to Medicaid, you're wrong. It will impact the doctors, the hospitals, the communities. And this isn't new. We know that this is something that
President Trump went after, in his first term, proposed cuts to Medicaid. That was the plan. It continues to be the plan. And if you think you won't be impacted by Republicans wanting to make medical decisions for your kids and for your family, you're wrong too. My Republican colleagues have no business being in the doctor's office with your kid. Now, this bill is an attack on parents and doctors and on kids. This bill would throw parents in jail if they help their transgender child access evidence-based treatments. Throw doctors in prisons for providing medically necessary life-saving care to transgender youth, care supported by every major medical association in the United States, and strip parents of their right to make medical decisions about their own kids' health care. I mean, really. This is what requires our attention today. We've sunk this low. We've sunk so low to jailing parents for trying to do what's right for their kids. Parents and doctors already have to worry about state laws banning medical care for trans kids. This bill would introduce the risk of federal criminal prosecution for basic medical care. And let's not forget the hypocrisy of all of this, the hypocrisy of banning medical care for trans kids while permitting that very same care for everyone else. Apparently, my Republican colleagues don't have a problem with puberty blockers or hormone therapy, only with the trans people who need them in order to live. It's cruel, as many people have said today, it's cruel. And there's no medical evidence behind this bill. It is hatred, it is bullying, and it's rotten through and through. And this amendment strikes at one of the worst aspects of this truly reprehensible piece of legislation, and I urge my colleagues to support my amendment and keep Republican congressmen and women out of your kid's doctor's office. I urge a yes vote on my amendment, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentlelady from Wyoming is recognized.
Just very quickly, this bill does not add a new crime. It just simply amends an existing statute, as we've already talked about. And if you're going to use the word creepy, I think it's pretty fair to define as creepy bodily mutilations and chemical castration of minors. It doesn't prevent counseling. It doesn't prevent other treatment for so-called transgender youth, but it does prohibit bodily mutilations and chemical castrations, something that I believe many people, in fact, I'd say 80 to 90% of the people in this country agree with. But most specifically, I know that we have the support of Prisha Mosley, Chloe Cole, Amelia Schmidt, Laurel Herbert, Per Joseph, Annika Biggles-Lyson, and Simon Biamaya Price, all of whom signed this letter. I would ask unanimous consent for putting this letter in the record. This is a letter from folks who have detransitioned after having gone through some of the things that we're talking about. With that, I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentlelady from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to support this amendment and speak to the underlying bill. You know, I love the title, Protecting Children's Innocence Act, because what a misnomer that is. You know, the bill does just the opposite. You actually protect a child's innocence by not bombarding them with adult ideology and ignorance and immoral calcification. Why don't we let our children figure out who they are on their own without us inserting our judgments onto them? How about this? Why don't we love our kids? Why don't we love our kids and trust their parents to let them figure out who they are, who they want to be in this world? I am struck by the fact that we're actually talking about genital mutilation and trying to prevent that from happening when, hey, we were trying to do that in our Foreign Affairs Committee with USAID, because there is real genital mutilation happening on young girls, mostly young girls, in other countries around the world. But you know what? We cut that funding, pun intended, and yet we're here talking about it. When this is something, I mean, if it was so prevalent that young kids were being snatched and taken into doctors' offices and all these crazy medical things were happening to them without their parents' consent, that would be on the news 24/7. And it's not happening. This bill is continuing to push a false narrative about something that, quite frankly, we should be talking about, the cuts that Republicans just passed to the medical community. You know, we're going to be dealing with hospitals and doctors closing their doors because of the cuts that you all passed. We're going to be dealing with our grandmothers not being able to get their Medicaid benefits because of what you just passed. You know, what about folks who are trying to get fertility treatments? Well, they're not going to have access to any of that because of what you all have been doing. And then how is any of this going to be interpreted or even enforced? We have been ricocheting in this committee today around states' rights. You know, it's wholly inconsistent. 2 weeks ago, like no states' rights when you want to have a national, carry law, everybody can get a gun, boom, boom, shoot them up. And then it's state laws, only I guess when it fits your narrative. This right here should not be debated in this committee. It should be left to states and it should be left to the parents. There are legions of young people who are living in a gray area as they figure out who they are. Heck, there are legions of adults and even some congressmen and women living in the gray area. Give them space, but don't criminalize them or prevent them from getting the medical attention that they need. This bill goes after children and their parents and medical professionals. And then how does this thing get enforced, get interpreted? I mean, are we going to have goon squads? Are you going to have troops stationed at doctors' offices or in schools and therapists' offices, yanking down kids' pants to see what they've had done or what they're preparing to have done? I mean, what kind of world are you trying to create and force us to live in? I don't want you in my life. You probably don't want me in yours, which is why we shouldn't even be debating this bill, let alone passing this bill. And let me just say something else. I have run into so many members of the trans community, young people, adults, and you know where we meet? We meet in church. We meet at the farmers markets. We meet in the parks. We meet at family reunions. We meet in the grocery stores. And we are all talking about the same things. How we can live our own lives without people that we don't know, without people that we know want to harm us, who don't love us or care about us, coming up with crazy definitions about what a male is and what a female is. We want to live without that in our lives. So vote yes on the amendment and no on the bill. And with that, Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Gentlelady from Washington is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank my colleague, Representative Balint, for introducing this amendment that I think makes it clear the most common types of care young trans people receive are safe and medically necessary. And so I would once again turn to the American people and ask you, do you think that you or your doctor should be locked up for getting the care, getting your child the care that they need? For all the talk from the other side about big government staying out of people's lives, they want to get between you and your doctor. That's what this bill is about. This is Republicans in Congress forcing their way into your doctor's office and telling you that they know better than you, the parent, better than your doctor, about what medical care is appropriate for your child. And by the way, if you disagree with them, this bill allows them to lock you up for 10 years. And listen, if they can do this on this issue, they can do it on any issue. They can get between you and your doctor on any issue. And I'll go back to the truth that most U.S. medical organizations, through lengthy, independent review processes, back gender-affirming care, which normally involves therapy, puberty blockers, and hormone therapy. And let's remember too, as I said before, just because I think we got to repeat these things, trans children make up around 2% of minors in the United States. And out of this already very small population, only 11% are even prescribed hormone therapy. And that's with the advice and consent of parents and doctors. So we're literally over and over again talking about this tiny fraction of kids here, instead of talking about anything that's going to help your lives. For the vast majority of trans youth, care comes in the form of puberty-pausing medications. And I bet if I were to go through and do a little survey of all my colleagues on the other side and ask you to define what these are, you wouldn't be able to tell me. I bet you wouldn't be able to tell me, and feel free to come up and tell me later. Maybe the doctor on the front row would. These medications have been prescribed safely for both non-transgender and transgender kids for decades to treat a whole range of issues. They're well-researched, they're standard clinical care, and trans patients use them at exactly the same doses and for exactly the same reasons as their non-transgender counterparts. So this isn't like crazy treatment that's only used for one small group. This is actually treatment that can be used by everybody. And let's be clear, while the effects of these medications are reversible, puberty can have irreversible effects on a young person's body. And these life-saving medications prevent trans young people from going through the wrong puberty and preserve their ability to make a choice down the road without any permanent impact to the body. Gender-affirming surgery, which we talk about a lot in all kinds of ways here on this committee, is so rare that a child in America is more likely to die from a gunshot wound than to receive that care. And I don't see a single bill being brought up in this committee that tackles the epidemic of gun violence against young people. To make this point abundantly clear, I want to read a testimonial from a parent of a trans child on what this care means to them. Alana says, "If not for the support and care my 14-year-old doctor received over the past 3 years, she might not be alive today. Before beginning gender-affirming care, my daughter would cry herself to sleep, feeling disconnected from her body and from herself. She often expressed a desire not to live and was overwhelmed by feelings of despair and alienation. Her mental health was fragile, and she seemed lost in a sea of confusion and pain. It was heartbreaking to witness her suffering and to realize how much she needed support. Since starting gender-affirming care, everything has changed. My daughter now presents fully as herself, confident and authentic. She is an engaged student and actively participates in band, roller derby, and cherishes her friendship. She has blossomed into a joyful, resilient young person who embraces her identity and her future. Her experience is a testament to the transformative power of acceptance and appropriate medical care, and it is a reminder that every young person deserves the chance to live authentically and happily." I proudly support your amendment, Ms. Balint, and I yield back.
Gentlelady yields back. The question now occurs on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from Vermont. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. In the opinion of the chair, the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to. Roll call being requested by the ranking member. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Jordan?
No.
Mr. Jordan votes no. Mr. Issa? Mr. Issa votes no. Mr. Biggs? Mr. Biggs votes no. Mr. McClintock? Mr. McClintock votes no. Mr. Tiffany? Mr. Massey? Mr. Massey votes no. Mr. Roy? Mr. Roy votes no. Mr. Fitzgerald? Mr. Klein? Mr. Gooden? Mr. Van Drew? Mr. Nels? Mr. Moore? Mr. Moore votes no. Mr. Kiley? Mr. Kiley votes no. Ms. Hageman? Ms. Hageman votes no. Ms. Lee? Mr. Hunt? Mr. Fry? Mr. Grothman. Mr. Grothman votes no. Mr. Knott. Mr. Harris. Mr. Onder. Mr. Onder votes no. Mr. Schmidt. Mr. Schmidt votes no. Mr. Gill. Mr. Baumgardner. Mr. Baumgardner votes no. Mr. Raskin. Mr. Raskin votes aye. Mr. Nadler. Mr. Nadler votes aye. Ms. Lofgren. Ms. Lofgren votes aye. Mr. Cohen. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson votes aye. Mr. Swalwell. Mr. Liu. Ms. Jayapal. Ms. Jayapal votes aye. Mr. Correa. Ms. Scanlon. Mr. Neguse. Ms. McBath. Ms. Ross. Ms. Ross votes aye. Ms. Balint. Ms. Balint votes aye. Mr. Garcia. Mr. Garcia. You're not recorded. Mr. Garcia votes yes. Ms. Kamlager-Dove. Ms. Kamlager-Dove votes yes. Mr. Moskowitz. Mr. Goldman. Ms. Crockett. Ms. Crockett votes yes. Mr. Klein. Mr. Klein votes no. Mr. Fry. Mr. Fry votes no.
Clerk will report.
Mr. Chairman, there are 10 ayes and 15 noes.
The amendment is not.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Right now, ICE is showing up at courthouses across the country, waiting to arrest people after their official immigration hearings. Is this what we thought we'd see in America? ICE officials lying in wait to grab people who are actually following the rules? In some cases, these people had just had their cases dismissed. They walked into court following the rules, doing what they were told, following the legal pathways, and they're being taken into unmarked cars and fast-tracked for deportation. And let's be clear, this isn't about catching dangerous criminals. It was never about catching dangerous criminals. These are moms, these are dads, these are students, these are grandparents, these are workers, people who are trying to get through the legal process the right way. But ICE is turning our courthouses into traps. The very places that immigrants are supposed to go to follow a legal path to citizenship have now become traps to lure people in so that they can be arrested, detained, and disappeared. ICE tricked a Vermonter, Mosa Madawi. He's been legally in our state for 10 years. He showed up for the final step in his citizenship process, the final step, only to have masked men detain him after he exited the courthouse. He knew it was a risk to show up, but he decided it was worth the risk to maybe finally become an American. Imagine going to court, following the process, and then getting arrested the second you step outside. That's what's happening in America right now. And last month in San Francisco, 4 asylum seekers were taken by ICE after their hearings were over. In New York City, even a city official, Comptroller Brad Lander, was detained by ICE while trying to support an immigrant friend. If they are willing to rough up city officials and mayors and even a sitting U.S. senator, what does that mean for the rest of us? These tactics are to scare people, and people are now afraid to go to court. How does that possibly make our country more safe? People are skipping hearings, risking automatic deportation because they don't trust the system anymore. How is anyone supposed to follow the legal steps if even those are now a risk? Republicans claim over and over again in committees that this is only about illegal immigration. It's not. If that were the case, then they would be just as outraged as I am that people are being snatched outside of their hearings in court. It is an attack on due process, plain and simple. It's an attack on the idea that we all deserve a fair shot in this country. It's also a clear tactic to instill fear in all of us so that we will be intimidated into submission and we will stop standing up for our neighbors. ICE agents without visible IDs, without any official markings on them, with masks, they're acting more like vigilantes than of agents of our government. How can we even trust that these are government officials? It's nothing more than kidnapping, and it needs to stop. No more secret arrests, no more plainclothes agents waiting outside of courtrooms. This kind of thing does not happen in democracies. It doesn't. The only way to protect Americans from these abuses is to provide due process to anyone facing deportation. Due process exists to protect American citizens, to protect all of us from wrongful deportation and wrongful detention. But this administration does not seem to care about this complete and total violation of our constitutional rights, a right that we are all entitled to, regardless of status. Under Trump, ICE and DHS have become a means to carry out political arrests and to silence anyone that disagrees with their extreme agenda. That's what we're looking at right now. It's never been about removing the criminals. It's always been about creating mass fear, mass intimidation, so they can retain more power. This is not what Americans want. I need my Republican colleagues to fight for everyone in their districts. I need them to speak up. Where is your line? Where is your line? I yield.
Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, we all know that the Republicans' so-called big, beautiful bill is wildly unpopular. Every poll, including Fox News, shows that Americans think it's rotten, and it is. That's why Trump is trying desperately to rehabilitate the bill in the eyes of the public. But Americans aren't stupid. They don't want their health care taken away. They don't want us taking food away from hungry people. They don't want our rural hospitals to close. They don't want to add trillions of dollars to the debt, and they sure as hell do not want the wealthy to continue to get rich off the back of the rest of us. This is not rocket science. They want a tax code that doesn't screw us over. They want affordable rent and mortgages. They want lower health care costs. They want to see us fighting for a better future for their families. All this bill does is take and take and take away from working people and provide it once again to the billionaires who do not need it. They see right through it, and so do we. I yield back.
Is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 30 seconds to the gentlewoman from Vermont, distinguished member of the Budget Committee, Ms. Balint.
Gentlewoman from Vermont is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, this is a cruel bill. Thousands of Americans will die because of it. Rural hospitals will close, millions will lose their health care, and kids will go hungry. Americans will be poorer. They will be sicker because of my Republican colleagues, because they are falling in line instead of standing up for their people back home. This bill shows us their priorities, and it's not you. They are taking away your health care to give more money to the very wealthy. This bill is for billionaires, not for you. I yield back.
Gentlelady's time's expired. Members are...
Consent to address the House for 1 minute to revise and extend my remarks. Without objection, the gentlewoman is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, I take to the floor today because I'm angry, and so are Vermonters. We are furious because of what happened yesterday to a Vermonter, a U.S. citizen, as he attempted to return home. Wilmer Chavarria is a community leader. He is a school superintendent in my state. He was held and interrogated for hours yesterday in the Houston airport by CBP agents and given no reason for his detainment. Wilmer called this experience psychological terror. Again, we are talking about a U.S. citizen here. So when we say this can happen to any of us, this is what we're talking about. This kind of violation of our constitutional rights is how leaders use terror to intimidate us into silence. So I don't want to hear about how everyone is going after the violent criminals in this country, trying to get violent criminals off the streets when community leaders, school superintendents are being detained because of the color of their skin and the sound of their last name. We need to hold on to our collective outrage. We do not need to accept this. This is not what Americans want. I yield back.
Parliamentary inquiry.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Apparently, the whereabouts of our missing witness have been ascertained. He's appearing on GB News, which I guess is the network he works for outside of the Rayburn building. I just wonder if it would be consistent with the rules and the practice of our committee for us to send someone to invite him to come back, because I think we have 5 or 6 members who haven't questioned yet. Would that be all right if we sent someone to go alert him that there's still members waiting to do their questioning, just out of courtesy and respect for our colleagues?
Well, the chair will make note that the witness has appeared voluntarily, he has left voluntarily, but in terms of going and asking him to come back, no objection there.
Okay, if we could do it, if we could find him, and I'd like to submit for the record this clip from GB News. British free speech under threat. Nigel Farage says UK is an authoritarian state like North Korea.
Without objection.
Thank you.
Gentleman yield. Yes, sir. The chair recognizes the representative from Vermont.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I spent my August traveling around my state listening to Vermonters tell me what was on their minds, and there was one constant thread, and that was fear and concern for young people, for their safety, for their future. And parents kept asking me, will my kids ever be able to afford a house in this economy? Is it going to be safe for my kid to go to school? And are my kids safe online? Over and over again. And I want to tell you about one conversation I had with a high school student in Vermont who said to me, we all know that social media on our phones is hurting us. And in some instances, it's literally killing us. And what he wanted to say is, what are you doing about it? What are you doing about it? And I have to ask myself the same question, because I'm a parent, I'm a former teacher, I'm now a member of Congress, and what are we actually doing to solve the problem, to stand up for our kids? And it's clear we need real attention on this. We need to focus our attention, and we do need to regulate corporations behind these problems. And we need real public oversight, yes, over the gun makers, yes, over financial speculators, but also big tech. Because polls show across the country, Americans overwhelmingly want us to take action on the harms that are hurting their kids. And yet here we are, first hearing back. We're not talking about the AI platforms that are leading kids to self-harm. We're not talking about the algorithms profiting off of teens' eating disorders. We're not working together to hold big tech accountable. No, we're here talking about how other countries are being too mean to big tech. It's gross. Professor Kaye, thanks for being here. Can you briefly describe how the EU's Digital Services Act regulates social media content for children?
So the DSA is a very big piece of legislation, a big regulation, but it gets to exactly the point that you're making, which is the DSA is the result of a years-long process of democratically Europe trying to figure out what's the response to the massive power of big tech over their information environments. And so to give one example, they provide a mechanism that actually requires those companies that are considered the very largest platforms and search engines to do an assessment of the risk that they cause in the context of illegal content, which could include child sexual abuse material. That is really only doing that basic risk assessment that we should imagine all companies would do.
Exactly.
And then based on that, they're actually obligated to take mitigating measures against them. So that's one example.
Yeah, I mean, this is bare minimum stuff here, right? Bare minimum.
Yep.
Risk assessment. What are we subjecting our children to?
Correct.
And so in your assessment, does the EU prioritize protecting kids and teens from content related to suicide and self-harm?
So the DSA is not content specific, right? It doesn't require any company, for example, to take down any particular kind of content. But in the risk assessment provision, it's pretty clear, and if you read the negotiating history around the DSA as well, it's pretty clear that this is one of the key issues that concerns Europeans and thus concerned the regulation as it was adopted.
Thank you. I really appreciate you being here to balance this out. So look, we got to follow the money here, okay? I want to draw your attention here to the visual here, okay? Trump inauguration fund, Amazon, $1 million, Meta, $1 million, Google, $1 million, Microsoft, $1 million, Apple, $1 million, OpenAI, $1 million, and the list goes on. This hearing is not about making the internet a safer place for kids. It's about harassing Europeans who are trying to do something. No, it's imperfect, but they're trying something, and we sit here twiddling our thumbs. There has never been a more important time than now to create some basic rules for big tech. Our kids are more important than these billionaires and their shareholders, period. If we truly want to protect our kids, we have to push back on unrestrained corporate power and try to retain some moral clarity in this moment.
Jill?
I was told I would have more time because there was a member that went over by a minute.
Sure, go right ahead.
We should be looking at any country around the globe who is actually trying to do something. And no, should we copy exactly what they're doing? No, but we shouldn't stick our heads in the sand and say that, oh, there's nothing we can do here. We cannot maintain the status quo and then go back to our constituents and look these parents in the eye and say that we're actually doing our jobs. The solutions are right in front of us if we would actually do the work here in this committee. And I yield back.
The gentlelady yields back. I would just remind the gentlelady that Mr. Zuckerberg from gentlelady from Vermont is recognized. Recognize you. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I first want to thank the members of the committee who have spent time to move this much-needed legislation forward, and I will, of course, be supporting it. Trafficking survivors deserve a federal legal pathway to clear their record. And many states, like Vermont, my home state, has already taken these steps, and I'm glad that finally on the federal level we see that there has to be a tool for survivors to remove convictions from their record. So I am grateful that we're working in a bipartisan manner. And the effort is rightly focused on the victims. But, you know, I've been sitting here for hours, and a couple times I actually just had to leave because sometimes it feels in here like it's a game and we're trying to one-up each other. And just looking around the room earlier, 1 in 5 women in this country are going to experience sexual abuse or rape in their lifetime. That means members of the committee, members of the staff, members of the public, members of the press who have been in here continue to struggle with their experiences. And we heard from the victims last week who said, what we want is for people to listen to us, to listen to our stories. And it was a bipartisan group of women. And there were Republican women who showed real courage on that day, who stood up in front of cameras and in front of the press and said it isn't about politics or one-upping each other. It's about our lives. And we sit in this committee and we forget, people watch what we do here. Girls, teenagers, women who have been abused, they watch what we do here and they watch to see if we are taking their experiences seriously.
And it's shocking to me, with every little bit of information that comes out about what was in that birthday book. Let's just look at the birthday book that was released this week. Those men knew exactly what was going on, and they condoned it. Powerful men were protecting powerful men, and it continues to go on in Congress. Powerful people are protecting powerful people, and I don't care where the evidence goes. These women deserve to have all of the information released, not just what the committee down the hall decides is going to be released. They deserve to have everything into the light of day, to have the sunlight be shown. And we have a responsibility to stand up for those women. And, you know, I was sitting here looking at all of our records in terms of like how many of us have kids. And on that side of the aisle, I counted 50 kids and over 10 grandkids. I know if I did the same count over here, I'd get a similar outcome. If you are not willing to risk anything as a member of Congress, if you are not willing to risk your seat, then you are not brave. Courage takes actually risking something. And it took real courage for those people to stand up last week and say to the President of the United States, come down here. We are not a hoax. Our experiences are not a hoax. And every time you say it, it is a hurtful thing to us. So if you can't do it, it says something about your willingness to show real courage in this job. Every day I wake up and I walk towards this building and I say, I will never, ever think, what if I lose my seat over this vote? What if I lose my donor support? What if the president does not stand with me? Again, if you're not risking something, then you are not showing courage. And I can't believe that we just need one more vote now with this member coming. We need one more person, one more signature. All it says is release all of the information and let's see where it takes us. I think we owe these women this, especially after the raw deal they got from Acosta. Let's try to make it right here. And I hope and pray that someday you do not need to look into the eyes of your kids when they realize you did not stand with the victims. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Question.
Objection. The gentlewoman from Vermont is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, so over at the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, the administrator, Dr. Oz, yes, that guy, decided to curb waste. The government, he decided they should curb waste by letting the government use AI to decide if your medical procedure is really necessary. That means for-profit companies will use bots to deny care for seniors and working people and will get rich doing it at your expense. Right now, that's over 70 million Americans who rely on Medicare and Medicaid for their insurance. If there's one thing that Americans agree on right now, it's that our healthcare system is sick. Our premiums are too high, our access is shrinking. We are all enraged by a system that is already designed to deny us healthcare coverage, not make us healthier. Our system care is so perverse, we don't need yet another way for the system to screw us over. Americans deserve affordable, quality health care. And AI should not be determining whether you get health care. And that's what Democrats are fighting for. I yield back.